Hello everyone. This video is an introduction to value. Value refers to the lightness or darkness of a color. To create value, you add white or you add black. If you add white to your color, you're going to create what's called a tint. Here you can see in this example, I have yellow, red, and blue. And to each step along this scale, I've added small amounts of white. Same with the red, and with the blue, creating what's called a tint. If I add black, I'm creating a shade. And as you can see here, blue, red, and green, each color has been altered and the value changed by adding small amounts of black. The more black you add, the darker the value in a shade. The more white you add, the lighter the value in a tint. So this morning I'm going to show you how to mix to create tints and shades. So as in the previous video, I'm going to lay out my palette again. Warm colors on one side, cool color on the other, and to this cool side of my palette, I'm going to add a green, a pre-mix green. And of course, white and black. Adding white to create tints, adding black to create shades. So I'm going to start with red in this case, and again, some very small amount of water just to get the pigment flowing on the brush. And I'm going to lay that down there. So you can see I have my pure red. And with the red, in this demo, I'm going to add white to create a tint. So I'm going to pick up a small amount of white. And then come in from the side and pick up some red. So I'm going to lay that down. And of course, remember, if I wanted to make this is fairly saturated color, so if I wanted to make a lighter or more transparent wash, I would just add a touch more water. So you can see I'm picking up my white first because the red is very powerful, very intense, and it'll make a change very quickly. So I can see from my previous color, there's a difference there. But I'm just going to use, again, return to my test paper to lay out a swatch or a brush stroke so that I can see if that's exactly what I want for the project that I'm working on. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit more water, come back to that. And there. 3 tints. I could keep going, getting lighter and lighter. And I can do the same with any color. The addition of white will raise or increase or give high value by adding a tint to that color. Next, I'm going to create a shade. I think in this case, I'm going to bring over some green. I need a little more water to get that pigment moving. And I'm going to lay down my pigment first, just to get some pure color going so that I can make a comparison. A little more water. And then with a touch of black, and again, black will affect that color very quickly. And again, I'm going to come over with a stroke of my color to see if that's what I want in my work, in the image that I'm painting. Pick up a little bit of color, and I'm going to lay that down. So I'm getting a darker value. I'm creating a shade by adding a touch of black. And I'm going to pick up a little more pure color and see one more example to create an even darker value. Now that looks almost black as you look at it, but you need to test it on your paper to be sure. It's deceptive on the tray. So you can see here a very deep forest, dark forest green. So I'm going to pick that up. And if I want it to flow a little more, I'll just do a little wash on this one. You can see I can go from pure saturation right out to a wash. And you can also notice I keep a little bit of tissue or Scott towel there so that if I want to add a little more, reduce my water just a touch, and add more pigment up here. It's thinning out a little there, but that covers tints and shades. The importance of value in a painting, there are a number of reasons why we use value. One is to create color contrast, to define space, and to model an object three-dimensionally. And value is very important, working from light to dark to create three-dimensionality. So this morning I'm going to give you a demonstration working with a very simple form to create dimensionality with value, or to model. The term used is modeling. Whether you're working with an abstract image, abstract shapes, abstract forms, circles, spheres, cones, whatever the image, or whether you're working with a very realistic image, you can always create or model an image and give it dimension. So I'm just going to clean my brushes. And in this case, I'm going to work with a blue. I'm going to turn my palette. I'm going to pick up a small amount of blue just to get some pigment mixed. You can see here in this image, I have two drawings, one of a ball shape, one of a cone shape. But keep in mind that a ball form, when you're drawing or you're painting, it starts out as a circle. So whether you're working, with any kind of abstract form, you can model that form into three-dimensionality. And you can see in this image here, I actually drew it first, put in marks, created values, and I'd encourage you to start that way on any of your projects, just especially when you're focusing on drawing, to actually, with your pencil, actually shape in those values. You can see down here I've got some darker values. What I'm suggesting is my light source is over on this side. So I've put in some darker values here, and it fans out. Over on this side, there's a lighter value. And you'll see from your unit, we talk about working with value, just working with black and white when we first start a project. So, don't be concerned that you're starting with a drawing and you're going to paint over it. That's a good way to start learning about values in working with pigment. So I'm going to pick up. So I know that this side is going to be darker, so I'm going to go, of course I'm going to go darker. So I'm just going to lay a little bit of pigment there. And then I'm going to blend out the edge because I know that on this side it's going to be quite light. And I can bring this right over in a simple wash. Do a little bit of dragging with the dry brush. Soften out those edges. A little bit too much water. Be careful with your water. You can always pick it up again. So that's just the beginning. So I'm going to then, just to get into the flow of working with pure color, I'm going to lay down so I'm just going to fan that out a little. The other thing is, if you find you've got too much water and you want to knock that back a little more, you can either use your brush or you can go in a little bit of toweling, and that'll pick up pigment as well. Now, of course, I'm trying to model this object. I've started with pure color, and I need to let this dry before I go back in with a darker value. But let's just mix up, bring over a little bit of black, and a swatch, see what I've got. You can see I get this much darker blue. The value is changed, it's a darker value, and I can add more black if I want it darker. I'm just going to pick up a little more. And turn your paper if it's more comfortable for you to hold the brush. Don't worry about keeping everything. And I'm just going to run a little bit of a darker value along the edge there. So right away I'm getting that darker value, the undershadow showing through. And I'm going to just blend that out a little bit there. And it's nice to show your mark. Don't be concerned about it being seamlessly modeled. Now again, as I said, this is quite wet. And one more thing I'd like to do with this before we conclude is to create a light wash on this side because it's quite light over here. So let's just pull that over. Pull this out. You can see I could go in on this side with a tint. I could add white to my blue, or I can let the white of the paper be my white. So that's also, with a very light wash of the blue, it can create that light value that you're looking for on this side. Now I have another one here that is already dry, and I think I'm going to just go in, and you'll see how here the pigment's flowing quite a bit. Here it's dry, so you'll be able to see the difference between that sort of wet in wet, pigment in wet, and wet pigment in dry. So again, I'm going to create a darker value for that blue because I'm going to work on the shadow side. Let's see what I've got there. As you can see, that's a fairly dark blue. Just a little bit of water to carry it. And I'm going to go in on this side. Clean the brush a little, get rid of some of the pigment, or I could, get rid of that excess over here. And I'm going to just drag that down a bit. So you can see I could even go in darker up top. And I can drop pigment down on it. So you can see right away that that there's a dimensionality being given to this shape, which was once a circle. So, and again, I would go where I would say it was a flat circle. Now I'm going to just go a little darker. You can see that's a little darker, a little bit more black. You get the richest blacks really by adding pigment to it rather than a straight black. So again, I'm going to turn to the side. I'm going to come under, right in under the edging, because I know, and I could go with a finer brush here, I know that the underside here is meant to be much darker. So I just went in with a line, and then I'm going to just take my brush and blend that out a little. And so you can see I've got wet and wet going there. And I'm just going to drag it out a bit. So that gives you that sense of modeling. Now, I have used the white of the paper to create that three-dimensionality and to indicate the light source, which is coming from the right. But you can mix a tint if you want to work with the pigment and create a tint to actually model in the white on that side. That concludes the presentation on value, and thanks for listening, and see you in the next video.